Welcome to the E Show with Neil Ravin. Founded in 2013, the EHL has become the college placement leader on the East Coast. Sit back and learn more about the next step in your junior hockey career.
Welcome to the E Show, presented by the Penalty Box Foundation. The Foundation's mission centers around their daily motto, we take care of our own, as they help out all of those within the hockey community who experience a catastrophic event. Learn more at penaltyboxfoundation.org. What's up? My name is Neil Ravin, and this is episode number 140 of the E Show. On this week's jam-packed episode, Jake Basile kicks things off by interviewing Joe Bertagna, who is currently in his 40th season of serving as a commissioner of a hockey league. Next up in the weekly rundown, we officially announced the roster that will be heading to New York next weekend for matchups against Nazareth College and SUNY Brockport in the 2022 EHL All-Star College Series. Further along in the E-Crew Fantasy Challenge, a new set of picks are made as Team HNIB promises to close the gap on Team OG. Finally, as we do every week, we wrap up the episode by previewing some games to watch in our What to Watch For segment.
Hello, E-Show. Today, I'm joined by Joe Bertagna, the commissioner of the EHL. On this 140th episode of the show, we're celebrating Mr. Bertagna's 40-year career as a commissioner, both at the NCAA level and now the junior hockey level. Before he was a commissioner, he was an Eastern Massachusetts champion at Arlington High School before moving on to play goalie at Harvard. Mr. Bertagna has had a lengthy coaching career as well, one that involves time with the Boston Bruins and a 50-year goaltending school. Joe Bertagna, thank you for taking the time to join us.
So first off, you've been a commissioner in hockey for 40 years. Has it felt like that long?
Actually, it hasn't. I mean, I feel youthful, even though I'm 70 years old. I've always been on the academic calendar, so whether I was a student or a coach or a commissioner, the year begins for me the day after Labor Day. And I've always had that back to school start, back to the season. And time has gone by fast, but it doesn't seem like it's been that long.
And so, focusing now on the EHL, how did you end up involved with the EHL, and how much did you know about it before you got in?
Sure. So when my time with Hockey East ended, I was approached by Bill Collette, who's one of the owners of the Seahawks. And I know his family, his brother Mike is married to my niece, Mike, and my niece Michelle played at Northeastern. And asked me if I'd like to get involved. And I was a little gun shy at first. I really didn't know a lot about it. So my first year, I was just a consultant. And as I learned about it, and certainly I really liked the hockey. Once I saw the stuff between the glass, outside the glass, I'm still learning the business side of things. But I was impressed by their mission statement, which I thought was very honest. They said, we're going to put kids into D3 hockey. And I liked the fact they weren't trying to claim they were something they weren't. And not to say that somebody couldn't come here and then move on and eventually get to D1, but the mission really is, and we've lived up to it. I think it was 170 kids or so last year. We're finding a place for these guys to keep playing and chase whatever dreams they have. So I like that idea.
And I'm glad you mentioned the whole path to college thing, because that is the big tagline for the EHL. So you've been at the college level, now you're at the junior level. So do you believe that college is still the best route for hockey players, and especially with the growing number of coaches? We're seeing hockey players end up as coaches, general managers, hockey ops, all that kind of thing.
Well, even yourself. I mean, there are to put games on, you need an incredible supporting cast, whether it's guys doing media or social media or at ice level as trainers, video people. In the old days, the coach did a little bit of everything. And now, at least at the Division I level, they surround themselves with hockey ops people who are kind of mini administrators in training. They've got video people. But yeah, I think it's a great opportunity for these guys to get to college and to stay in the game. I mean, I played in Europe for a year. I played in the Midwest in Milwaukee for part of a year, went to grad school. And I know I was over in Ireland with a group that put on a college tournament in Northern Ireland, and the guys that play over there get to go to graduate school while they play. So you can use hockey in any number of ways, just for the fun of playing the game, but you can also piggyback other things you can pursue because of hockey.
So mentioning the whole supporting cast and how much more involved it is. So you mentioned that sports were a lot simpler when you were a young athlete. So being in a field where things have evolved so much technologically,
yeah,
and even down to the play style, equipment, everything like that, how have you stayed on top?
So the biggest area for me, or the best example, is you mentioned I had been coaching goalies for 50 years. If I didn't stay on top of the new way goalies are taught, I wouldn't have anybody coming to me for advice, So I've always hired younger people. I've always asked a lot of questions. I've stayed current, and you have to work at it. And in that particular column of goaltending, once the equipment changed and got so much bigger, it really changed how the goalies could play the game. They could play deeper in the net. They didn't have to come out and pick their spots. I still think there's a place for that, and I've tried to bridge some of the old school values of goaltending, which haven't changed. Puck control, rebound control, competing, with the new techniques, and tried to provide some guardrails for younger goalies. I still work with a prep school, with Governor's Academy, so I work with goalies in that 16 to 18 range, and that keeps me current as well.
So a typical day in the EHL for you, what does it look like?
It's funny. A typical day for me is hockey, but not all EHL. So Neil, as you know, does an unbelievable job, and he does a lot of the heavy lifting for the job. For me, it might be, we have all these calls, Zoom calls with coaches, Zoom calls with owners. There's the business side of it, is you're always trying to look to see opportunities to expand the league, grow the league. And then internally, I do a lot of discipline. I look at video. I talk to Gene Binda, his son Gino, who assign our officials. We're always looking ahead to the next special event and how we can make it a little bit better. We have a call this week with the coaches, and one of the things I want to talk to them about is, maybe we're not doing enough for the better students in our group. There are some schools that don't want to waste time if they don't know the kids can get in, and maybe I think we could do a better job at putting together all their, not just a line at the bottom of a line chart that says what their GPA is or their SAT scores, but where they go to school, because a 3.5 in one place is not the same as another place, and maybe do a little bit better job at showing those better schools that, hey, we get some pretty good students here as well as hockey players. You ought to know who they are, and you ought to come after them. I also try to use my contacts in hockey to bring different outside people onto the coaches' calls, whether it's Ted Donato from Harvard or Blaise McDonald, Colby, different. I had a sports psychologist on last year to talk about the pressure that the kids are under to get into schools. So I think they want me to use whatever experience I have and bring it to the league, and I've tried to do that.
And so, speaking of your experience and kind of putting the focus to inside the glass, as you say it, winning an Eastern Mass title at Arlington, playing at Harvard, you've been this age before playing hockey.
Yeah.
So how has your own experience as an athlete kind of influenced your approach to your work?
Yeah, so I grew up in a town where hockey was a big tradition. My brother, my father-in-law, my mother-in-law's two brothers, generation after generation played for the same coach. So the whole idea of a traditional hockey community is something that resonated with me. And I still get together with hockey teammates every 2 or 3 months for dinner. And I still play with a bunch of 65, 70-year-old guys, which include friends from youth hockey, friends from high school and college. So I do have the sense that I know they're all trying to get to school, and they're all trying to use it. They've been kind of, we played more sports longer, I think, than these guys do. They kind of specialized a little earlier with their goals set, and they played longer after, some of these kids will enter college not having been full-time students for 2 or 3 years. That's certainly a different experience than we had. I went to college when I was 17. So I guess if anything, I try to bring to these discussions that, yeah, you want to get to college, but this is something, whether you think you're going to play in the East Coast League or you're going to keep playing, you can play hockey the rest of your life if you want to. I wonder sometimes if, because of this hard and long drive to get into college and changing programs and, changing high schools, changing junior teams, whatever, when they finally fall off the competitive ladder, will they still just want to play for fun? There's an awful lot of adult hockey, there's an awful lot of pickup leagues that guys just go out to play for fun. And I hope this generation of kids still when the competitive edge falls off, that they remember why they started playing and they still want to keep playing.
And certainly you probably had a lot of fun at your time in Harvard. So you have any fond memories from that time?
Oh, it was a great experience. I mean, and I got to relive a little bit. My son, my middle child, went to Harvard and graduated 2 years ago. He didn't play sports there, but I got to get reconnected with it. And my coach is still alive. He's 87 years old. Bill Cleary, who was a big influence in my life. And he was an Olympian, 2-time Olympian, and local guy from Cambridge, Mass. Went to Harvard, came back to coach, came back to be the athletic director, won a national championship as a coach. And through Billy, he always kept it fun. And we happen to have a lot of kids from Massachusetts on our team, so I still get to see these guys. I think we had 9 guys in my class from inside 495. And, I looked at the rosters here. One of the teams has 7 Europeans on the junior team. And here, we were a Division I college that had all guys that grew up doing the same things you did. So that's another reminder how international it's gotten. I don't think we had any Europeans on our team back then. We could build a pretty good Boston College. I know up until the very first year of Hockey East had all Massachusetts. The whole roster was Massachusetts kids. So it's gotten a little bit of a bigger undertaking, to say the least.
And this league is there's a good concentration of players from the Northeast, but like you said, you do get a lot of
they're from all over.
From all over, exactly.
Yeah.
So, what do you think that does for a local player to have experience playing with guys all around the world?
Well, I think it reminds them that they got to get out of their bubble a little bit. That they're not. There are a lot of people playing the game. There may not be a lot of great players, but there are a lot of good players. So the competition to get into our league, thus the competition to get into the colleges. One of the things I do with the American Hockey Coaches Association is break down where our players are coming from. And over the last couple of decades, fewer kids from New England are getting into the Division I hockey, and more kids from what we call non-traditional areas, California, Florida, Texas, as the NHL has expanded into these warm weather areas. They're producing some pretty good hockey players. And for whatever reason, Massachusetts in particular has kind of fallen. I think it's about 50% of what they gave to Division I 20 years ago.
And so you made a pit stop in Europe in your career. So what was the best thing you ate while you were in Italy?
Well, I ate a lot because it's the only season that I was heavier in February than I was in October. And part of that also is we didn't have jobs. We just sat around all day, writing postcards home and watching TV and go for walks. But we practiced at night. We played Wednesday, Saturday schedule. We played kind of like back when I played in college, we played Wednesday, Saturdays, not these weekend series. But the food was good. We were so far north, though, it was as much a German culture. Like a lot of the towns and the street signs were in both German and Italian. And part of the area of Italy that I played in was occupied by Germany during the war. But you could always get a pizza. They used to have these things, they called them toasts. But what it was like a grilled cheese sandwich with ham in the middle that they would put in a toaster. They just drop the whole thing in. So when guys would go for a beer, instead of having like a bowl of peanuts or snacks, they'd eat these little grilled cheese and ham sandwiches. They were unbelievable.
Do you still make them to this day at all?
Well, every time I do it, and the cheese melts, and I set fire to my toaster. So I got to go back to the traditional. I think these were special toasters just for that sort of thing. But I've gone back there 8 times, and they're hosting the Olympics in 26. Cortina is a small Olympic village, and they're co-hosting with Milan. So I've actually started to reach out to my friends over there to see if I could get a job as a ticket taker or something, and crash in one of their houses and work the Olympics, which would be great.
So after you graduated from Harvard, you began your goaltending school pretty much immediately.
Yeah.
So we've talked so much about having careers in hockey. Was it always going to be that way for you?
So I don't know when this hit me, but I've always had multiple jobs. I've always liked juggling jobs, and I used to joke, hey, if I get fired from one, I guess I have another one. But I think it was more I liked, like when you had asked me before about what a typical day in the EHL, it's really what's a typical day in hockey for me. So like tomorrow morning when I come back for the showcase we're at, I have to also do a weekly poll for the American Hockey Coaches Association. So I'll be watching these games, like first day of games, with some discipline already we've had to do. But I'm going to be collecting ballots from coaches across the country to have the top 20 in men's hockey and top 15 in women's hockey. By the end of the day, I will complete a newsletter. We do an October newsletter with a company out in Minnesota that covers all of college hockey. I'll have these events. I have a nephew that plays for the Seahawks, so I get to watch some of my family who's playing in the league.
Who's your nephew?
His name is Mike Collette. He's in the fourth line for the Seahawks. He played at Central Catholic High School. And then I usually do goalie clinics every other Monday, so this week I don't have to do one. But I also work for the Hockey Commissioners Association, and one of the things I do with them is the Mike Richter Award for the goalie of the year, which is very fond of that because Mike went to my goalie school. So I have all these different jobs, and they all kind of connect because hockey's a small world. I started working summer camps because Tim Taylor, who was my assistant coach at Harvard, had a summer camp outside of Boston. He hired me to work with the goalies, and I just ran with that. And so I'm going to wrap it up next summer. It'll be my 50th, and I'm going to call it quits after that. 50 years seems like a good round number.
Oh, yeah.
But I've had a lot of guys who play in the NHL, certainly a lot of college goalies. In fact, I saw a goalie out here today who had kind of a rough game. Cam Mckiernan from Revere, Mass. Went to my camp a few years ago. So I only do like a week or two now. When I was in my heyday, I had 10 weeks and 500 goalies. And especially around the time I was working for the Bruins, because I was getting a lot of publicity, and I could turn that into a good thing for the business.
One of the philosophies that you in your teaching of goaltending is how the person affects the goalie. And now there's been much more focus on the mental side of the game, especially as time has gone on. So, what does that mean to you, and how do you, put that across in your teaching?
So every once in a while you run across a kid who struggles with that part, and you try to temper their expectations and get them to focus on their effort, not on their results. If they're focusing on the results, that sometimes gets in the way. I also have some good teaching aids. There was a book written back in the 60s called The Inner Game of Tennis. It's not so much about tennis as it is about the mental game you have, the inner game while you compete, when you talk to yourself. So if you're a golfer, if you're a diver, if you're a tennis player, when it's just you. And the goalie is different. It's a team sport, but he has individual responsibilities. And I try to get these kids to understand how to quiet their mind. But the other part of the mental game is these days there are so many opportunities to find decent coaching on the basics. A lot of these mini rinks. I had one NHL goalie say, "Yeah, we're teaching kids how to play goal in a studio. They make studio scenes." But they all come out with a good foundation of physical skills. That doesn't necessarily translate to knowing how to play goal, because the mental game that I think about now is how you see a game and how you can read and distinguish how one play that looks like another play is different. It could be the guy's a righty instead of a lefty. It could be the trailer has a back checker on him or the trailer doesn't. You got to pick up little signals, because we're all trying to figure out when is this play all going to come together, when and where, kind of time and space. And the goalie is tracking the puck, tracking, but in their mind is when is it all going to come together. And I'm trying to get these guys to watch hockey and understand that in given situations, there are only 2 or 3 outcomes that can come out of a different situation, and anticipate them. Don't guess, but prepare for them. And I find that these weekly mini rink goalie sessions don't get into that stuff. They don't teach them that part of the game. So you get a 16, 17-year-old kid who comes to you who's got all the physical skills in the world, but you realize he's really deficient in understanding the game, and thus understanding what it means to know how to play goal.
And so a coaching career for you culminated in 6 seasons with the Bruins. So was that sort of surreal for you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I was still very much a fan.
Yeah.
And, my first camp was a rink that doesn't exist now north of Boston, and I felt like, what am I doing here? I never played that level. I played at a semi-pro level. But most of the goalies were pretty good. I mean, there were a couple that were a little full of themselves, but we did, I lasted 6 years under 4 or 5 different head coaches. So, Harry Sinden, who was the general manager at the time, used to just say, look, if the coach wants your back, you're back. I listen to them. And my favorite coaches were probably Mike Milbury, who got me involved, Terry O'Reilly, who was terrific, and a guy named Rick Bonas, who stayed on, coached at Dallas, coached at Tampa. And I was still doing the college thing, so it was a part-time. I'd go to every home game, traveled in the playoffs. We got to the Stanley Cup Finals twice. We lost Edmonton both times. In fact, one of the goalies we had, Bill Ranford, was 18 years old, we traded him to Edmonton, and he beat us the second time. So came back and hurt us.
And so what made you make the transition from coaching to admin?
Well, I kind of always had one foot in each camp. So I'm sure I didn't think of this at the time, but looking back, when I applied to college, I sold myself to colleges as somebody who could be an athlete that also had other skills, the student-athlete model. When I got out, I basically sold myself the same way again to get jobs. That I was somebody who was comfortable in the locker room. I could be a coach. I had started my coaching career. I had some skills in coaching. But I could also communicate, organize, do other things. So I got an internship at the ECAC, and I parlayed that into a job at Harvard's athletic department in sports information. So even while I was in sports information, I was coaching the JV hockey team. I was coaching the women's hockey team. So I really had a foot in both worlds. And I was inside the glass when I was coaching, and I was outside the glass when I was doing sports information. And then from that, the ECAC brought me back in a series of part-time jobs. A lot of it spiked, ironically, when Hockey East came on the scene and did things so differently and so powerfully. The ECAC hired me to try to keep up with them. And then after 15 years with the ECAC, Hockey East, through the coaches, called me over to be their first full-time commissioner. So I've never lost that, and I came up early in this conversation, the notion about doing things both inside and outside the glass at the same time. And it served me well.
So your list of accomplishments as commissioner of both ECAC and Hockey East are, they're pretty long. So TV deals, sponsorships, outdoor games, attendance records. So what kind of things do you look back on that you're most proud of from that time? So
a lot of those bios that you get information from are written by somebody else, you're an assistant, a PR person, whatever. And I'd look at them annually to edit them or just make sure they're accurate. And what I always thought was left out was just running the office on a day-to-day basis, paying your bills, having good relationships, dealing with the media, putting out fires, the spending. None of those are as sexy as TV deals and the things that people like to hang your hat on. But I was probably most proud of 23 years of running a solid office and having good people around us. Now, there were some towards the end. I think the Fenway thing was huge. I'm a huge Red Sox fan. Yeah. The Belfast, I thought the Belfast tournament, which is still going, it's been off for a couple of years, it's back this fall. I thought that was a great example of doing something that, there's all this stuff about brand recognition and advancing the brand, so that's good. But providing an undergraduate such an educational experience that's also a hockey experience. So they're getting to go to Europe. Some of those kids, first time they go to Europe. They're getting to play over there. They're getting to see the world. Some of them go back and play in Europe because of that experience itself. They realize it's not just that I have to finish my college career and get a job. Maybe I can play in some place. And the hockey in Belfast wasn't at the level of Sweden or Finland or some of those other hockey opportunities. But it was pretty good, and they offer you a chance to continue your education. So I think I was very proud of those types of special events. But lost in some of the way other people see the job was it was proud of just doing the job every day the way it was supposed to be done.
Dealing with different teams was certainly part of the job. And in your book, you talk about a dispute involving BC and Merrimack. And you said, when both Boston College and Merrimack expressed displeasure with my statement, I figured we had gotten it right. Yeah. So finding compromise, balancing the interests of organizations, players, coaches, all that kind of stuff. How much was that involved in the day-to-day, and how difficult was it?
It got increasingly difficult because there used to be a system where the athletic director was the adult in the room, and then the AD had controlled the coach, and then the coach had controlled the players. And I would answer to the athletic directors. Towards the end, the athletic directors became every bit as competitive about wanting to win as the coaches. So where I might have had a coach call up every so often and try to get a ref pulled off a game, and that just can't let that happen. Towards the end, I was starting to get athletic directors calling up, trying to get referees pulled off a game. And I always saw myself working for the league as a separate entity, as opposed to I work for these 12 athletic directors or 11 athletic directors. And I think that, I still believe in that philosophy, that I had to identify what was in the best interest of the league. I do the same thing here. But in the process of doing that, you kind of you have the opportunity to confront different people. And I think towards the end, when they decided not to bring me back, I think I had probably burned out some bridges and had gotten maybe even a little more confrontational with them than I had to be. You know? And but I don't regret any of that. I think I felt I was sticking up for what I was being paid for, was to advance the interests of the group, not any one school.
Throughout your career, one big theme is that you've loved it all throughout it, from start to finish, and the hockey world has shown you some love back. The USA Hockey Distinguished Achievement Award, Joe Concannon Award for your work in Hockey East, induction in the Mass Hockey Hall of Fame, Hockey East Women's Trophy is named after you. So, looking back on your career and being recognized for these things, how special is that for you?
It is special. I mean, the Concannon one was the latest, and it was kind of a surprise because it's a media award. Everybody else that had won it was either a writer or a broadcaster. And so I was a little taken back, but, I think what they felt was while I was there, I had created a good relationship with the media that helped our coverage. I also, in my other works, whether it's my book or working with the AHCA, I've done a lot of writing on the side and often have done profiles on the Jack Parkers and Jerry Yorks and things like that reflect well in the league. And I knew Joe Concannon. He was a writer for the Globe when I was starting out. So that one was special. The USA Hockey one's probably the most prestigious, and that too at the time was a surprise because you look at the former winners and you see my coach Billy Cleary, you see Parker, you see York, you see Ben Smith, you see these people that are real giants. So it does make you feel good. You don't do it for those things, but when somebody takes the time to recognize you, it does. I'd be lying if I said it didn't make you feel special.
I'm glad you brought up the media thing, because you mentioned also that some of the most fun you ever had was sometimes your small time spent doing journalism. So did that kind of help you in dealing with media all the time? I
think so. I mean, it also had the potential to get me in trouble because I always wanted to be honest with the media. Sometimes there are situations you just can't share everything. So I made sure I never lied to anybody. But there were times where I'd have to say to them, I'd love to help you out, but I can't help you on this one because there's some sensitivities or whatever. The other thing, too, is on a more daily basis, I wanted to be quotable. I know when you're writing a story, you just don't want somebody to deadpan things. So I tried to find that sweet spot between sharing too much but not giving them enough. So I think in that sense, I know they appreciated the honesty. But, in the long run of the college hockey, we didn't have too many scandals. We didn't have a lot of stuff like you might see in football or basketball. We had a couple of situations that were awkward. But I think in the end of the day, they did appreciate that I had a job to do too. Mm-hmm. And I tried. We did have some coaches. I remember one coach who said to me, do I have to go to the press conferences? I said, yeah, you do. And I said, why wouldn't you want to go? Well, I'm afraid of what I might say. I thought it was kind of immature. I said, you've got a captive audience that'll print anything you say. Don't go in there and badmouth the referees. Talk about your freshman who played an unbelievable game, or your fourth line, or your special team. There's always something in the game you can get positive. These guys are ready to write down anything you tell them. So I thought it was a little unsophisticated for a guy who'd been around to say, well, why do I have to go to those things? Yeah. Don't look at it as a burden. Look at it as an opportunity. And some of the, Jerry York was the best, I thought. He always gave sincere praise to the opponent, win or lose. The other guys that just... They didn't realize when they would say things that would take away from the opponent's victory. Or if they blamed the officiating, they blamed their goalie, they said we didn't get any luck. What about the other team? The other team out there that did something. So the guys that got it could be gracious, even in defeat. And some of them never quite got it.
And as we approach the end here, so big family guy, big Sox fan. What is a day off for you? What do you like to do?
I don't vacation well. I don't relax well. I have 3 kids that are in their 20s, and I miss them because they're not living at home. So I'm often sending texts to my kids, hey, what do you guys thinking of you? What are you doing today? And, they'll all get back with a one-liner about what they're doing. I've always been happiest when I've been productive. In the summertime, I have a garden. I work on that. In wintertime, there's always plenty to do. My wife is an athlete. She plays golf. I don't play golf, but she plays in the summer 4 times a week. She plays hockey with a bunch of women friends. She's younger than I am. So we're active, even though the kids aren't in the house. But my daughter's playing with a bunch of 50-year-old women in Springfield. I'm going to drive out and catch a game of hers. It's easy to take the train to New York to see where my boys are. Last time I went to a Mets game, we watched a Tottenham-Chelsea soccer game at a pub. So I'm happiest when I'm with my kids, but and so far they seem to still want to hang out with Dad. That's good. Maybe if I make the visits too often, that'll change. But so far we've timed it, I think, well enough.
So finally, is there anything left on the bucket list for you?
Well, if I can work the Olympics, that would be good, and especially if I can work it in Cortina, that had the '56 Olympics, where my coach Phil Cleary played. In hockey, there's not a lot left. I'm still playing.
Yeah.
And one of my teammates said, "You don't seem to be getting up as fast as you used to." I said, "You think?" But no, I've been blessed, so I can't say that I've missed out on too much.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Bertagna.
Thank you.
This week's episode is brought to you by Hockey Tech, the developers for the new EHL app, available now in both Apple and Google stores. Thanks again to Jake Basile and Joe Bertagna for kicking off this 140th episode of the E Show. We're excited to have Joe in his 40th season as a commissioner. As he said in his interview with Jake, doesn't feel like 40 years. But with that, let's bring in the E crew now. And this week, it's Jeff, Tyler, and Anthony. Guys, another week has passed in the EHL and the EHLP, and I have no idea who's good and who's bad. I have no idea.
Who are they? First off, Joe Sidoni, well done last week. Thank you for filling in for me, bud. Team OG, you fit right in. I missed you boys last week. It was kind of weird listening and not being a part of it, but busy schedule didn't allow me to get in with you guys last week. So, but yeah, I think we all talked about it though, Neil. There's some people that I think don't qualify for the Who Are They segment anymore. We won't say who that is. As good broadcasters, we'll tease it a little bit because we're going to get into all the games that happened this week. But I think there are still some teams, and maybe we added one or two that are going to be in that segment. So it was an interesting weekend up at the Ice Den. And you were the one down at Hollydale. We did not go down there and see any of those games, but you're going to have to tell us how those fare. We just had the box scores online.
I'll say this, Anthony, how do you live in a state where traffic is like always a thing? Like, it doesn't matter what time of day it is. There's always traffic.
Neil, do you not see my Twitter bio? I'm an NJ Transit apologist. I take public transit wherever I go. I don't have to worry about traffic.
Man, like the drive home on Saturday night, I left Hollydale at 4:00. Like, that's not a bad time to leave on a Saturday. But it took me a good 6.5 hours to get home. So I guess I just should not live in New Hampshire. Whatever. Let's jump into the weekly rundown.
It's time for the E-Crew's Weekly Rundown.
The E-Show Weekly Rundown is brought to you by the Junior Hockey Podcast, your home for junior hockey news, knowledge, and nonsense. Check them out at tjhpodcast.com.
And this week's episode, as I'm sure everyone will see with how long it is going to be, is an absolutely loaded episode. Obviously, we had Joe on to talk about his 40th season in our 140th episode, but we also get the chance to announce our All-Star team that will be going to face SUNY Brockport and Nazareth College next week. Tyler and Jake will be the ones on the call for those games on Hockey TV.
Let's go, boys.
I think what I'm most excited about is just those schools have just committed so many of our guys the last few years that they've come to us so often. Now we can go to them. I've also never been to upstate New York before. So
it's pretty.
Yeah.
I've been to Lake Placid, Saratoga Springs. That's God's country, as they call it.
Yeah. I mean, Adirondack has asked me almost every weekend so far this season if I'm coming up this weekend, and I just haven't done it yet, but we're still early in the year. Like, guys, I'm gonna make it up there. Right. But obviously we're gonna dress a pretty full team next week. For NCAA exhibition games. Technically, you can dress as many as you want, which is kind of a unique thing for college. But at the same time, these benches in college hockey don't have like stadium seating, so you can't go like too far.
Right.
But with 19 teams in our league, all 19 teams get at least one guy. Easy math for the E-Show podcast. I mean, 7 teams get 2 guys. So obviously this roster that I'm about to read off is not going to be, it can't reflect everybody because we're only bringing 26 guys. 15 forwards, 8D, and 3 goalies. But I think I feel confident, right? The point of these games is to go up there and give them a good competitive matchup. I don't want to be blown out, obviously. Like the last game against UMass Boston, Anthony, you had to call last year. UMass Boston had a few Division I transfers last year, so they took it to us a little bit at the end there. But I feel good about this. Do you guys want me to just read off the list and then we'll talk about it?
Yeah, that's totally fine.
Okay, so
I think everyone's been dying to see who's on this list, Neil. So get it out to the masses.
Like I said, we start with 15 forwards. Actually, you know what's tough, Jeff, is I shouldn't be the one to read off this list because I'm probably gonna pronounce the name wrong. But regardless, we're gonna
you can mix and match too if you want.
We're gonna start with Victor Deneau from the Vermont Lumberjacks, Chris Hibson for the New Hampshire Avalanche. The Seacoast Spartans get 2 forwards. Obviously, William Prey. We'll talk about his pace later on in this podcast. And Kenny Maxwell. Here's where I probably should have actually recorded Jake saying it. I think Jake says this name the best. Eddie's Grigorievs. I think is how he
Grigorievs.
Yeah, I think he's how he actually pronounced it. I mean, Tyler, you get to say it on the air. So George Kolovos for the Wizards, Christian Howanitz for the Express, Ryan Deschamps for HC Rhode Island, Dallas D'Amato for the Connecticut Rough Riders, Joe Harrison for the New York Apple Corps, Ethan Lim and Hunter Rossi from the Connecticut Chiefs, Graham Broadfoot from the ProTech Junior Ducks, Charles Lavoie or Lavoie, Anthony?
It is Lavoie.
Lavoie from the New Jersey 87s, and Alex Gamzatov round off the forwards. Like I said, 15 forwards, 5 lines. For those that are asking, how do you manage 5 lines? You just go in order constantly. And I promise those 15 forwards, you will be tired by the end of the weekend. 8D include Victor Malzahn from the Boston Junior Rangers, Dom Metro from the Valley Junior Warriors, Adam Joubran from the Seahawks Hockey Club, Jackson Collard from the Railers Junior Hockey Club, David Dell from the ProTech Junior Ducks, JJ Creighton from Team Maryland, Shane Green from Philadelphia Flyers, Nolan Wutsky from the Philadelphia Hockey Club, and then our 3 goalies, Trevor Jewell, Jack Boschert, and Stefan Kulhanek. So I guess I'll start since I'm talking right now. The first 2 guys that stand out for me that I'm going to be looking at the most next week are Dom Metro and Stefan Kulhanek, both of which played on this team last year when we faced Curry and UMass Boston. For you guys, whoever wants to go first, what stands out to you?
For me, Neil, right off the bat, up front, Victor Deneau. I think his performance in the mini showcase in this season so far, he's always been a dynamic offensive player since coming into the league. He's got a tremendous shot, and I'm curious to see how his speed and skill will match up against college competition. And then in goal, he wasn't on the team last year, but Jack Boschert, I think, proved that he was a top 3 goaltender in the Eastern Hockey League last year. And all 3 of our goalies this year, very much capable of going up against these colleges and their competition.
Yeah.
And I mean, William Prey, he's been the talk of this entire season, whether you're talking to EHL coaches, college coaches, our own staff. That's a guy that, like you said, Neil, as far as you want to be competitive, well, excuse me, get a guy like William Prey and his line mate Maxwell. I did ask Coach Trider. I thought about this on the weekend. I don't even know if I told you about it, Neil. I think I told Tyler. I came up with a new nickname for that Spartans line, the Preomax line, with William Prey, Drew Olivieri, and Kenny Maxwell. Olivieri not on the team, but Prey and Maxwell are. So we got the Prey Max part, not Preomax. And I think those 2 guys have been really exciting so far this year. So I think those are 2 guys that, a lot of guys are saying are already at, they think, college level talent wise. So let's see it, because the SUNY Brockport guys, the Nazareth guys are going to bring it. So that'll really be a good litmus test to see if they are at college level yet.
So what was Trider's reaction to Preomax?
So he was like, "Oh, Jim, I like that. It's very good."
That's good. I like that one. It is amazing how his pace has increased from where we were last week. He was averaging over 2 points a game last week. Now he's above 2 points per game.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't keep this pace, right? Like,
I mean, who's to say, Neil? Who's to say? He's already just about halfway through equalizing his point total from last year, and we're 9 games into the season. So that is absurd.
Chris,
It's a testament, though.
2.44 points per game. Woo.
Yeah, like it seems like it's unsustainable, right? But then again, he's continuing to do it. It's
Right.
9 games is a small sample size, sure, but
He's going to listen to this podcast and he's going to be like, and I took this personally.
maybe we'll provide him with
And his pace is only going to go up from here.
He'll need it.
He's going to score 12 goals and 10 assists just in the All-Star weekend. He's going to go, I'm going to give you what I gave you in 9 games. I'm going to give you that against 2 colleges, and everyone can shut up.
Jeff, I love that quick calculator use there for the 2.44.
I might have used the EasternHockeyLeague.org.
Awesome. Even better. I as we've on many occasions said, our math is not great on this podcast, but I do know 46 times 2 is less than 100. And if this is more than 100, I'm going to assume that we're over 2 points per game. That was my reasoning in my head on the fly. So
I'm an honest man. I did not use my calculator. I used EasternHockeyLeague.org points per game.
That works.
For 500, Alex.
Anthony, what sticks out to you?
I guess I'm going to stick with the guys that I know at the 87s, Charles Lavoie, Alex Gamtitov. Those two have been on a line along with Kyle Fulkerson, and those 3 have really started to gel. They've had a lot of chemistry, and they've been racking up points for an 87s team that kind of like last year, early in the season, haven't really scored that many goals, but right now they're leading the charge and trying to get those numbers back up. So I think if Gamtitov and Lavoie play on the same line, then I think they can work some magic against those college teams too.
And I would be remiss to not mention our head coach for the team is, of course, last year's champion, Adam Hooley, assisted by Tim Kuhns and Sean Bertoni. So, Anthony, maybe Adam does want to keep those 2 guys on the same line together. I guess, Jeff, what we're going to have to figure out is if the Preomax line is split up, who can we put with them? The rest of the forwards to come up with some funny nickname. I don't know.
Cool play on words.
I don't think there's many.
I mean, Chris Hibson, you got Sons. We got Prey, son.
Well, yeah, you can kind of go Dallas D'Amato, Prey Demax.
How about the Prayson foot line?
Yeah.
Prey, son. Feet. Foot.
Yes. We'll have to figure that part
out. More off air.
We're gonna call you in for that one. But obviously, I'm excited about this year's team. The history of this event. It started in the 2017-18 season. We played just 1 game that year. We brought 23 guys to UMass Boston, and we had no idea what to think. It helps that season, Nolan Egbert and Mike Pagluca combined for about 60 saves, and
they were damn good.
And we lost by a goal, but there was an empty netter in there. We scored late. It was 2-1. They got the empty netter, then we made it 3-2. Like it was a phenomenal game. Next year we faced UMass Boston again and Plymouth State, and I think it was the Plymouth State third period that really kind of took this thing to the next level, because we lost that game 2-1, but actually doubled up Plymouth State in shots in that third period. And I say take it to the next level because the following year, the list of schools just began to grow. And that's when we faced Pittsburgh, Salem State, and UMass Boston. And then this past year, obviously, Curry and UMass Boston. But the number of schools that want to be a part of this event just continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And off air, I guess we'll say, we are going to announce another all-star team as well that is playing on the same weekend as our EHL All-Star team, and that's the EHL South All-Stars, made up of just the 5 teams from the South Division. Kind of out of nowhere, Don Parsons from Lebanon Valley College reached out to me, asked if we'd be okay sending just an all-star team for 1 division. Yeah. Why the hell not? So,
and from the talks in the office this weekend, Neil, this might be the start of something here.
Yes, it could be. I mean, like maybe
that's how good things start.
Maybe we have our main all-star team, if you will, and then you have 1 for each division as well. I think the biggest thing that the college coaches have said to me is that they're allowed 2 exhibition games per year. And obviously the majority of them take those 2 exhibition games at the very beginning of the year. Every now and then you see somebody do one in early January when they come back from the holiday break. But for the most part, they have their 2 at the beginning of the year. And what they like about us in the EHL is that by the time we get to that game next week, we're a month in. So we're in game shape. So as opposed to showing a potential opponent something that you guys, that your team does, show it against a team that's in game shape. And hey, in a way, get some recruiting done. I mean, how many times have we seen these teams commit players that literally played against them?
Yep.
Brendan
the 2-for-1
Brawley
special
is the first one I think of. He's at Plymouth State, played against Plymouth State. So there's so many of those. So obviously very excited about that. As I mentioned, Tyler and Jake will be on the call. I will be picking up Tyler and Jake and Trevor in Worcester. Yeah, Jeff, you're gonna miss that. I have to rent the car still. I have to figure out if I go quite as big as what was
the
that?
Suburban.
That was no. It was I think it was a GMC Yukon.
Tahoe.
I think it was a Yukon that we took down.
It was a big boy
to Westchester for the finals a few years ago, and I did so well driving it until I hit the curb in the hotel parking lot when I pulled it. I didn't hit it. I didn't hit a damn thing until I hit the curb.
They're hard to maneuver.
Oh, dude, like I got that thing going, and I was like, "Am I driving a school bus? Like this is an absolute."
That thing was huge. It was great though. We fit every human, every bag of equipment, and anything you could think of.
Every trophy, you name it.
Every trophy.
Gotta figure out what car we're taking still, but obviously very excited to get up to New York next week. As the Hicklings said, Dan and Margaret Hickling, who were at the mini showcase weekend, they're obviously joining us in Rochester as well. Rochester / Brockport. They're right next to each other. They said, we're so excited for us, the Hicklings, to be hosting the All-Star Series this year because they're from Buffalo. So
that's right.
we're
and
going.
Margaret went to Brockport, Neil. She told me.
So we're going to them as well.
Alone.
Oh, you know what? I actually, before we get too far into this, I have to show you guys what Margaret sent me during the mini showcase. She was so excited to share this with me. She's not buying it for me, but she says that I have to get it for when our newborn son arrives in February. Wait till you see this. But this is in the middle of the showcase. I'm running around making sure scorekeepers are set, this and that. Margaret's like, check out the link I just sent you. She wants me to buy this.
Oh, look at that.
It's a ride-on toy car. Now, what I don't understand is how this mock Zamboni is $350.
I was gonna say, damn, that's
if you
got a battery in it, it's got a motor in it.
If you ask me, worth every penny.
And look, it's for ages 3 to 8, so you get that that's a 5-year toy.
It's a
1-seater.
Do I bookmark this link for 3 years, Jeff?
100%.
Are there adult versions? Because
I would love one.
You know what, Tyler?
You
just got my head spinning. Am I gonna build a backyard rink sometime here soon?
Ooh, you got a lot of real estate, buddy. You got a lot of real estate.
Little pair of skates in the
Neil,
future.
we can have the All-Star game in your backyard in EHL outdoor game.
Wow. I don't know if I can. We probably can't fit a 200 by 85 rink, Anthony. So it'd probably be a little bit of a mini sheet with no offsides. But
3-on-3 tournament. There we go.
3-on-3 EHL pond hockey tournament.
Done.
Frozen finals. Anyways, we're getting carried away. Now let's jump into our regular weekly rundown shtick, if you will, because let's start in the EHL, and I want to work our way up because that's actually what I did this past week. I went from the south to the north. From the north,
went to the south. Everyone listened to that. You went to the south first and then the north. Okay.
When I saw Ehl there this past weekend, he said, "Welcome home."
Oh,
but
everybody's all flyered up.
But starting with the south, Anthony, I'm going to put you immediately on the spot because it's way too early to talk about playoffs, but we have to. Obviously, we have only 4 teams in the north, but 5 in every other division, which means every other division has a play-in game. And watching this South mini showcase this past weekend, I'm saying to myself, who the hell is going to be left in 4 and 5 respectively in the South play-in game? That's hard. That division is insane.
I mean, look, right now ProTech is up in the standings. They went 2-0 in the mini showcase. They lost though while they played a game during the Hookset mini showcase because it was two days in Hollydale, 2 days in Hookset, and while they were playing in Hookset, Philadelphia Hockey Club beat ProTech, but I mean, ProTech has looked strong right
7-4 I
now.
saw, too.
Philadelphia Hockey Club has looked pretty good. I mentioned before the 87's offense is not scoring as much as they'd like to, but their defense and goaltending has been great. So they were able to get 3 out of 4 points. They lost in overtime to Philadelphia, to the Little Flyers, I should say.
That was something I was going to talk to you about, Anthony. I saw they've only scored 18 goals for,
but they've only given up 15.
Right. So they're only averaging 2 goals a game. Played 9 games. Quick math. I did not use the Eastern Hockey League.org points per game there. But that's a credit to Coach Hooley and the whole entire staff to be able to still be 5-3-1, and you're only averaging 2 goals a game. Like you said, Cam Carroll's been lights out. Kyle Spann also doing a really good job down there. So yeah, it doesn't matter how you win. Just do it.
But I mean, Neil, to answer your question though, like I just don't know. Yeah. I mean, is Maryland, because we said it last week, is Maryland going to slow down as the season progresses?
Yep.
Will ProTech stay in first place? They do have a negative goal differential. They score a lot, but they also give up a lot of goals.
Yep.
So is that going to bite them later in the season where they might drop in the standings? Will the Philadelphia Little Flyers maybe jump up in the standings? They had a big win against the 87s. They had a slow start. Are they going to pick it up, or are they still going to struggle a little bit as the season goes on? But I can't count any of these teams out because again, it's just so tight.
Yeah. I mean, it's
I think the Little Flyers did that last year though too. Didn't they start out slow and then they went on that huge
that's the thing, like
season?
Your first thoughts on the South so far this year is, quote unquote, the Little Flyers seem like the weakest team.
They're down,
right?
Yeah.
But then they go out and they win in overtime against the 87s at the mini showcase, and I'm like, well,
they've won 2 out of 3 against the 87s.
They've won 2 out of 3 against the 87s. You know,
they have 3 wins, so that's
it's tough to say.
Wins.
I mean, Terry said to me at the mini showcase, he goes, why has nobody ever scheduled the way I scheduled? And he front loaded his schedule. That's why he has 12 games. And there are teams that are in double digits now, but there was a point where nobody else was in double digits in the entire league yet. But he wanted to leave room on the back end of his schedule for potential cancellations. And obviously he knows that there are going to be injuries, so he wants more rest in the second half, which we've talked about on this podcast at length. Like, how many games do you want to play down the stretch? Do you want to be well rested with potential rust, or do you want to go right up into it? So he rest or rust, Jeff. There you go.
That's right.
But they've obviously played 12 games. I'm not going to make you actually say, Anthony, who
it's too early for
who is going to be
who's
4
in,
or 5,
who's out,
because that would be like pure bulletin board material.
Yeah.
I do want to by bringing up the South though, I do want to give a shout out to a player who's in the NA. Which is, I know, kind of random, but while down at the mini showcase, I went to the Philly Rebels versus Northeast Generals game to see what the NA looked like. Obviously, just to see the speed and whatnot. Absolutely traumatizing to see a player break his femur, but Jack Demora from the Northeast Generals seems to be in good spirits now. I'm glad I was behind the glass for that, because I guess, the moment when he went crashing into the boards, there was a pretty good yell. But watching the paramedics kind of do their thing, which it took a while, right? But to see them kind of maneuver around, cut the pants off in a certain way and get his leg stable, it's pretty, I don't want to say it's cool, but to watch them do it, it's kind of fascinating to see how safe and protected they have to be. We had a similar situation with Charles Holt from the Wolves at our showcase. He didn't break his leg in the same area. It was more, I think, down closer towards his ankle, but they did the same thing with getting him on the stretcher. So like I said, I don't want to call it cool when a player gets taken off in a stretcher. That sounds terrible, but watching the paramedics kind of do their thing, I think that part is kind of fascinating. But Jack Demora seems like he was in good spirits. Obviously there were a bunch of us there, myself and EHL coaches, to watch that. So wanted to make sure we give that a shout out, but let's work up from there. And then hit the Central next. And a team that just continues to fascinate me are the Chiefs. There were some questions at times. Are the Chiefs for real? I don't know. Maybe yes, maybe no. but they come into the mini showcase and they pick up 3 or 4 points. And you know what? They are for real. Like I know, again, I don't want to be too early with any of these predictions and whatnot, but if you told me that in March they're coming to Providence, at this point I would not be surprised.
8-point lead in the Central Division. And yeah, I was the one who essentially called out their strength of schedule. And look, what they did this weekend definitely adds credibility to what they're doing this season. And right now, not sure if I go there just yet, but they are looking like the new front runners for the Central Division.
They're starting to get cooking. The chef's starting to cook in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Starting to cook.
But like, how amazing is it too?
advantage.
Out of their 10 games, real quick, 6 of their games have gone to overtime or shootout. Out of the 10 that they've played, 6,
including one on Monday in the mini showcase. But
right.
I think that's a trend they probably would want to try and turn around as the season rolls along. I think you don't want to be going into these OTs and shootouts. It can build up, and the season, of course, is a long one. It's a grind. So I think for Greg Heffernan and his guys, trying to get some more regulation wins would be nice, but they're winning games and they're getting points. And they shut out the New Hampshire Avalanche on Sunday. And that was a team last year that did not get shut out until Providence. And especially at home last year, they were a dominant team offensively. And I know the Avalanche look a lot different now this year, but still shutting them out in their own rink, that's an impressive feat. And
got to mention Adam Yost, the goaltender.
Good point. I was just going to mention that.
Because he was
career EHL shutout. So congratulations to him. And he's been a big part of their success. But they roll out Jake Williams on Monday against the Rangers, their third string guy. And he gave them a pretty solid effort. They didn't get the 2 points, but taking Boston into overtime and walking away, as Neil said, with 3 out of 4 points, that's a pretty successful mini showcase, I'd say. And they've got the second most points of anybody in the Eastern Hockey League right now. So I don't think that's something that I anticipated, at least this season. I'm not sure about you guys, but
no.
Props to the Chiefs, the Chefs.
They're also the only team in the Central Division with a positive goal differential right now. But
and I think, Tyler, what you were saying too is I think Coach Heffernan is actually taking that into consideration about all those overtime games. I think we were all kind of surprised to see Williams start, right? Easterwood and Yost have been really good. But I think he's like, listen, I got to spell these guys a little bit because, it's a long season.
Gives another guy an opportunity too, which you want to see what you have in all 3 guys. And
Yost is already starting to get looked at by colleges. You're always trying to get other guys looked at by colleges too. So yeah, good job by Coach Heff. And quickly about the Avalanche too, talking to Coach Sorrell over the weekend, that's still a good win for the Chiefs, but that's an Avalanche team that's really beat up. He was telling me and you, Tyler, Kyle Dan's still out of the lineup. Angelopoulos is out of the lineup. Fritz is out of the lineup. I think it was Crowell was one of the last guys he said. So he's got like 4 big guys and he actually had 2 guys during that game, his second game that I did the other day that got hurt. I think one was Bayer got hurt and couldn't come back. And so, I mean, that Avalanche team, where I know we're going to get to the North, Neil, but that's a team that they'll still always, I feel like, be there at the end, but that team is beat up.
You can't count them out just yet, no.
Yeah, they're beat up.
For sure. So to wrap up the Central, though, don't look now, but on a 5-game point streak, the New York Apple Corps.
Yeah, Lenny and the boys.
And a win over the Philly Hockey Club, a win over the Protect Ducks. Like, there's some good wins in there as well. Naming Max, you called an Apple Corps game, Anthony. Max Banoun, is that how you pronounce his name?
Banoun.
Okay.
Yeah, Anthony taught me that.
Great friends with Kyle Fulkerson too.
That's right.
Oh, good to know. Funny how he played last season for the Philadelphia Hockey Club USPHL Premier Team. Then he gets to start against PHC in their EHL mini showcase. Kind of funny how it works out that he pitches a shutout. That extra motivation, it's the thing about all sports. I don't know how you can just turn it on that much higher when you want to. All athletes, right? But you could, as that game was progressing, I was like, this kid's gonna get a freaking shutout. Like, he's gonna get a shutout because he just wants it that badly.
He was great.
David Myers doing it with
he was great in that opening game against the 87s. Banoun.
Yeah,
there's nothing more satisfying. It's like a player scoring a goal against his old team. For a goalie, if you can kind of show your old club up a little bit, and get the win for your new club and a shutout, which is just the added bonus. You're really more concerned about the win, but you do it in shutout fashion. That is a little extra sweet. So good for the Apple Corps. They're quietly climbing up the ladder a little bit, and it's early, but you keep stringing together points, stringing together wins. Eventually, it's going to get people to notice, and it's going to turn things around for your season projection.
And that's a young, energized rookie head coach right there, Lenny Caglione, that wants to, the former EHL player. We talked about that. Him and Nick Cotto went up against each other for our first ever former player versus former player coaching against each other. And I think Lenny's very energetic and very eager to show that the core are for real. So good for them. Make some noise in that Central. Keep brewing, baby.
It's open. It's open for business, I'd say, right now.
Keep stirring that pot.
We go to the East next, which I almost want to dub the everyone's 500 division right now. It's kind of
we're the beasts in the East.
It's kind of just a weird division, right? And like
it is.
You look at the Express, and you're like, oh, they're 6-3. Does it feel like 6-3?
Kind of a quiet 6-3.
Like very quiet 6-3. I would agree. Right? I obviously know that every time Jack Boschert's in net, he almost wins. He's 3-1 so far. I mean, who hates Jack Boschert are the Railers. They can't stand him. He kind of just has their number right now. But also Kyle Rourke has got 4 starts as well. And it's funny just how quickly things can flip with the start that the Rangers went on, and then kind of their stretch since, and they're right there behind the Express. They have a huge game this week. Is that the opener, Tyler?
That is finally the whole opener for the Express. Friday.
I said that on my broadcast this week, Tyler.
Come on down to the Rodman Ice Arena. Treat yourself to a fun one. You can run into me and say hello.
We'll get some Chick-fil-A in the lobby and go see Tyler.
Yeah. Ironically, Jeff did get both Express games in this mini showcase, and at Worcester.
Caring is what I call it.
And at Worcester. So maybe Jeff is now the voice of the Express unofficially. But I kind of agree with you, though, Neil. It's a division that it's really hard to get a read in. There's several teams that have started off slowly, and not just the Rangers, but the Wizards kind of flip-flop from wins and losses. The Warriors and Seahawks having a tough time out of the gate for different reasons. I think the Seahawks right now struggling offensively. Meanwhile, the Warriors trying to keep pucks out of their net. I know, Jeff, you were on the call of that game they had against the Express on Monday, and the old goalie carousel spun around quite a bit. I don't think I've ever seen 3 guys get into a game like that. But for Walpole, they're 6-3 in their wins, or in 5 of their 6 wins, they've held their opponents to a goal or fewer. Yeah. So that's a testament to the Express of last year with team defense and goaltending. But I think this Express team this year has a little more pop offensively. I think they've got a little more swagger than last year's group when it comes to the forwards. But it's right now, that game on Friday between them and BJR is going to be a big one, because the Rangers are feeling better about their game now. They're 4-5. If you ask Rich DiCaprio, they're 9-0. The confidence is always high up there. And if they get a win on Friday, they're 5-5 after an 0-4 start. And so you do have to kind of tip your cap there to them if they can swing that around. But right now, the East Division, it's interesting.
Not very beastly.
That sounds like something Rich DiCaprio would say. We're basically 9-0. Like, Anthony, we've been playing well.
He's not the only coach that said that. Terry Watts said the same thing to me. He goes, "We should be 11-2." What? What?
They're 7-5.
They sound like me with my fantasy teams. I'm like, if I just this guy,
you know what?
Start this guy, I'd win.
But you know what? It's so funny, because working with the 87s, Adam Hooley and Mckiernan, I can tell you right now, they're the complete opposite. I think Maddie in particular, where it's like, how are we not 0-10 right now? Like,
Maddie Kiernan. Oh,
well, if the East Division is the 500 division, quote unquote, then the North Division is the above 500. I mean, this division,
beauties up there.
Wow. You can't even predict what the 1-4, 2-3 matchups will be, because obviously with only 4 teams, they would skip the play-in game. You can make a case right now, and I'm not saying this isn't the case in other divisions, but you can make a case right now for all 4 teams going to Providence. It's that simple.
100%.
You can make that case. And honestly, my only disappointment in that division is I believe the game Tyler called, Lumberjacks Spartans on Monday.
Yep.
Not that I wanted to see the goalies get shelled. Let me make sure I say that out loud. But if you begin the game with 7 goals in the first 25 minutes, come on, guys. Yeah. I want another 7-goal second half. Like the building was loud during that game.
Only 2 in the second half.
Only 2 in the second half. Like, come on, guys. That game that had a 10-9 pace to it. Like I was all for it. But
those first 2 goals were like the first 2 minutes, weren't they?
You know what? Maybe that's just a testament to Brett Trider and Seth Gustin right now. That they're coaches that can make adjustments, and that's one of the reasons why they've both been so successful to start off the season.
Yeah, and there's a lot of superstition in that division right now. Guys wearing the same suit and whatnot. Seth and I had a great laugh because Seth had a great suit on each day. And he played the night game 8:00 on Sunday night, and I think they turned around and played. I want to say the 11 o'clock on Monday.
What'd you call him? The Undertaker?
I said, Seth, did you lay back in your bed last night just like this and then wake up like the Undertaker or like that Don't Wake Daddy board game? And then you just like I'm gonna just change the tie real fast. Like the hair was the same. Like everything was like perfectly the same.
Give the mustache a little quick comb before you walked out the door.
Yes.
He looked fresh. I told him, I was like, wow, you turned around quick, bud.
I mean, every one of those 4 teams, though, they have some serious pop, and
they can punch.
Talk about the 4 different personalities too: Chris Sorella, Brett Trider, Tim Cute, Seth Gustin.
Like
four very different
over
coaches.
Here, all the way over here. I mean, the Wolves. Wow. I mean, if you want to talk about how great that Spartans Lumberjacks game was, I think everyone had that feeling when the Wolves got that 5-minute major power play late in the Rangers game. They were at least going to tie it, right? You know, they were pressing so hard. Felak was doing everything he could to keep them out of the net. I did not think they would tie it and win it without the Rangers getting a point in that game, right? You thought that game was probably going to go to overtime, but man, the Wolves just keep winning. They just keep winning.
Number 1 of the power rankings. Please, everybody, read the fine print. It's Neil Ravin, the newest salesman in the world, said last week on the episode. I heard you, and I was laughing in my car.
I'm still getting it, Jeff. I've been told 3 times this week my power rankings suck. Like, I
myself reread the fine print just to remind myself. I'm like, how are we doing this? Okay, yeah, it makes sense. 3 points for this. You beat a top 5 team. Blah blah.
It's kind of like a domino. Like they beat them, they beat them, they lost to them. That's why you're there. Like
self-explanatory. Yep.
You know what? I'm gonna give myself credit right now. I think it's working. Okay, I think
it's way better. I like it way better.
Well, you don't have to do anything.
Yeah, we don't have to do the right, but we don't have to deal with the for all of us though as a
Yes.
As a group, doing the voting was very nerve-wracking. Yes. It was controversial. And then we all ended up on bulletin boards. Like, you idiots! You guys don't know what you're doing.
You higher end teams, you make a better case for yourself. Yeah, that's how it goes. And I mean,
really easy.
I also was fortunate to get both of their games as well for the Wolves that weekend, and both of them were close, and they have this unique way of. They've beaten teams 5-0. They've shut teams down completely. Trevor Jewell's been excellent in net for them. They turned to Charles Antoine Julien as well that weekend. He was strong. Love saying that name too on the broadcast. Really rolls nicely off the tongue. But
you say Wolves, for every save he makes, Tyler. You say save by Charles Antoine
Julien. You only say Antoine the full name when you have to. But it'd be a mouthful for every single stop. But. They're impressive. They kill penalties well. They scored a shorthanded goal. They lead the league in shorthanded goals scored. Their power play can get it done, as Neil just said. They capitalized on that 5-minute major against Boston, and then they do it at even strength too. So all facets of the game, they're just rolling right now. And Jeff, it looks like you've got a companion there with you behind you. The Wolves have been great this year. Great story this year, and. It's going to be really interesting to see where those 4 teams are ending up by the end of the year, because it's impossible right now to try and figure that out.
100%. I do. While we're on the Wolves, I gotta mention. I want to talk about Heath Mensch for a second. Obviously,
wait, before you do, I have to apologize to Heath because I accidentally called him Hunter Mensch. on the broadcast when he
Sure,
scored.
he hasn't slept a minute since, Tyler.
And I know it might not be a big deal to them, Heath, Hunter, whatever. But as the broadcaster, Jeff, we're all about trying to get things right, always try to be accurate. And so, Heath, I apologize.
No, all jokes aside, that's good. Well done, Tyler. I do the same thing.
Hey,
Tyler, I feel like you lost more sleep about it than he did. So.
But he obviously had the game winner.
I said something about it on the broadcast itself. That's how bad I felt about it. So just wanted to reiterate it here.
He had that late game winner against the Rangers on Sunday. And then I was like, you know what? Let's look up this kid, because whenever I see Mensch, all I'm thinking about is the meaning of Mensch, right? You guys know Mensch is like a good person, right? Integrity, honor. Like whenever I see him, there you go.
Person of integrity and honor. You nailed it.
So I look him up afterwards, and I was like, where did he come from? This is wild. Vegas. Las Vegas to Laconia, so keep the L, if you will.
Ooh.
And I was like, what did he do prior? Oh, he played for the Las Vegas Thunderbirds last year, had 102 points in 41 games. I was like, whoa.
And then 11 points in the playoffs in 4 games.
Yeah. So an awesome find for the Wolves.
Play for the Vegas Junior Golden Knights 16U AAA, hanging out with old Butchie Cassidy. Hey, Butch, how are you? We miss you. I'm sorry we did you so dirty. That's a topic for another time.
But just to read off the power rankings, I mentioned Heath Mensch because he's actually on the power rankings graphic this week that we put out just to put together. We have the Wolves still at 1, 87 still at 2, the Express still at 3. The Lumberjacks jumped the Avalanche for 4, so the Avalanche are at 5, and you obviously have Seacoast and the Chiefs knocking at the door. The way this episode works out, we're not going to talk about the EHLP as much this week. It's going to sound like not at all for those that are listening. That's because next week is a lot more EHLP talk when there's no EHL games, just the EHL All-Star games. But just to
EHLP.
Yes, we do have plenty of EHLP games. So just to make sure we cover it before we get into fantasy, the Lumberjacks are the new #1 ranked team in the EHLP, thanks to their weekend sweep of the Valley Junior Warriors. It helps that the Wolves also handed the Rangers their first loss. The Wolves also, let's just say, quietly undefeated since losing that game to the Huntsmen. Mm-hmm. So keep an eye on them. Rangers are at 2, Avalanche are at 3, Railers at 4. PA Huntsmen, undefeated since the showcase.
A wagon.
Are in 5th. So a lot.
Well, that
of
wasn't
teams...
bad luck to them. I think I called both their games with Joe Sindoni, and then Joe takes over by himself, and off into the winning ways they go.
On the bubble in the EHLP, a bunch of teams though: Seahawks, 87s, Valley, and those Wolves. But as I mentioned, a lot more EHLP talk next week, including our fantasy lineups next week.
All premiere.
Can I just say one thing about the EHLP real quick?
Of course.
Adirondack came to New Jersey to face the 87s. Both games were absolutely amazing, both going past regulation. The Junior Thunder won both of them. Mark Howe was on the bench for the first game. Yes, that Mark Howe, son of Gordie Howe, Hockey Hall of Famer himself. Great guy. I also got to speak with Glenn Murkowski before the second game. So look out for a Q&A article that's going to come out. Yep. I had a great conversation with him. But Adirondack is a team to watch out for. I love the way they play. They have a lot of great players. And, they had a slow start. They were 1-3-3 coming into that weekend. And now like 6 of their last 7 games have gone beyond regulation, kind of like the Chiefs in the EHL. But I think it's also because they play in a pretty tough division. So I think that Adirondack is certainly a team to watch out for, because I think they're just going to get better from here.
And I am going to mention them again in the what to watch for, but we can't skip fantasy yet. So now let's get to the E-Crew Fantasy Challenge.
It's time for the E-Crew Fantasy Challenge.
The E-Crew Fantasy Challenge is presented by BioSteel, the sports drink of the EHL. Use the promo code ESHOW, that's ESHOW, for 25% off when you check out at biosteel.com.
Air 5, Jeff.
Woo!
Team LG is just a wagon. That's all I have to say.
We've been doing this a long time, Neil. We should be good at this. If not, we should just,
Team HNIB they're picking good players. It's just not the right week. It's kind of like my fantasy football team. Like it's the same exact thing. So to recap this past week's points, which again was won by Team OG. First for Team HNIB though, 2 assists for Ethan Byrne, 2 assists for Drew Oliveri, a goal, an assist, and a power play point for Graham Broadfoot. Sam Hall, like I said, has been tremendous for the Express. Just said for Team HNIB, gonna take this week off until Team OG picks us. Same with Adam Jubran, and honestly, David Felak, he did everything he could in that start against the Wolves. Like if they win that game, the bonus points that you get for the top 5 win, it's totally different. But obviously, the Wolves came back and won that game. Still 15.2 points for Team HNIB, giving them 82.2 total. As for Team OG, I'm not strategically giving out Stars of the Week awards to players that we pick. It just happens to work out that way. Let's just make sure that's very clear. Like Ethan Lim getting forward of the week. He had 3 goals, 3 power play points, a game-winning goal against the Avalanche. He just had a really good week. That's 15 points for us also. So Louis Joseph Guérin. Oh, I got to find the Instagram message. Hold on for 1 second. He messaged me in the middle of the showcase.
What?
Yes, he did.
A weekend and a half.
Did he thank us for taking him?
It was more us thanking him for what he did.
I love that, LJG.
Big weekend for fantasy. Go Team OG.
Oh, love that. Thank you, LJG. You young chap, helping us old folk out with our walkers and everything.
Yeah, it was huge for us. Absolutely huge.
You're the old guy.
The goal and 3 assists. Ryan Arendes, 2 goals, 1 assist, 1 power play point, and a game-winning goal. Andrei Levtikov got an assist. Shane Green didn't get any points, but Shane Green probably will still be the captain of our EHL All-Star team against the colleges because he's the only 3-year veteran on that team. And then Shane Paremba, we thought good things going into that Chiefs matchup, but that was a 2-0 shutout for the Chiefs. So regardless, we still had 38.2 points. So that helped increase our lead up to 141.4 over 82.2. So I'm not going to say what I usually say to Team HNIB. I'm thinking it, but you guys can just read off your picks now.
We got to turn this thing around, Neil. No doubt about it. We got to close this, start closing this gap at some point. It's widening. It's getting wider, and that's a concern.
59.2. Calculator quickly. Oh boy. For all those following along at home.
The math speaks for itself. So this week, starting off for us, we're going to go with the New Jersey 87s. Alex Gamzatov, their leading point scorer. We feel really good about that selection. We're going to stay in the South Division. And we're going to go with Tyler Hissong from Team Maryland. Rounding out the forwards, we're going up north to the Avalanche. Dan Mckiernan, player that caught my attention at the showcase, has some good wheels. So hopefully he can put home some points for us. On defense, Rocco Siri from the East Coast Wizards. He picked up a couple of points in the mini showcase as well. Our EHL Premier pick, we're going with Adirondacks Jack Randall. And then in goal, we are handing the net to Tristan Fatadad of the Red Hot Seacoast Spartans.
Nice.
I'll go first. Oh, yeah, you should be confident. They are good picks. If for some reason
this is the week it starts to break through.
It has to at some point.
It has to.
Jeff.
Yeah.
I'll start.
That's good.
Okay.
Go ahead, bud.
We're gonna start off with.
You're doing forwards, D.
Yes,
goalies?
I'm gonna start. Well, yeah, I'm gonna try and go in order a little bit.
Right.
Actually, you can go wherever. The New York Apple Corps referred to Joe Chase as the pride of Howard Beach, New York. So I kind of have to find out what the meaning is behind all that. But obviously, I've learned.
I don't know much about Howard Beach.
New Park Pizza, baby.
Yeah, I've heard he's a pretty fun guy. He's got 11 points so far in his 3rd year with the Apple Corps. So
had a hat trick the other day, didn't he?
Yeah. 3 goals and an assist against the Rough Riders.
He's well on his way to setting new career highs this year. So Joe Chase will start things off. Jeff, where do you want to go?
I mean, we'll stay with forward if you want to stay and stay symmetrical here. I won't zig and zag and make everyone seasick. How about Will Halecki? Just did a nice game-winning goal interview with Jake Basile. You can catch on the EHL_hockey Twitter page. And he said the boys are. He said we're not there yet, but watch out. We've won 4 or 5 and good job by Halek. He's got 5 points in 7 games since coming back to play for Coach DiCaprio. Only 2 games out of those 7, he's been held pointless. So he's heating up, and the Rangers are heating up as we talked about. So let's go, Will. Keep that hot streak going. And then for our P player, Neil, we're gonna get a P player for our forward spot. Tyler Goebel, Anthony, you said?
Yes. Captain
Has 2 goals in 6 games. So we're gonna go with Tyler Goebel as our EHL P player at forward. And Neil, I don't know if you want to go D.
I'll do the D.
Okay.
Because one of them is a
them.
giant, first off. And Merrick Herda. I think I referred to him as a ladder off here before we got this thing started. He's 6'5", so
6'5", 180.
He's a lot taller. Actually, what's funny right now is Jeff and Tyler are on the left side of my screen, and Anthony are on the right side. So it's like the taller guys and the short guys. So Merrick Herda just dominates my side with Anthony. But regardless of that, he's been great running their power play. I actually started off the year on the EHLP team. I want to be like, hey, Wolves, what are you doing? This guy fits.
They're warming him up.
Yeah, exactly. And then this has nothing to do with golf, but Eddie Mulligan. I kind of just love his name. Any way that I can think about golf, as my wife likes to say, I always do. So regardless of that, he had the game winner in that game against Seacoast. The college coaches, it's funny to listen to them overhear what they're talking about, and he was catching a lot of attention at the mini showcase. And then
he's got points in 3 of his last 4 games.
Yeah, so that's huge. We would love to see that extend even further. And then our sources tell us that Kyle Span is getting 2 starts for the 87. So as I've told everyone, use your sources when it comes to fantasy. So I'm hoping for because I like when it's competitive. I'm hoping that the gap closes this week. I really am. And that's not me being a sarcastic jerk.
We're all here trying to build the brand.
Yes.
We are determined.
Yes. So with that, though, let's jump into what to watch for.
Before we wrap things up, here's what to watch for this week in the E-Show.
What to watch for is presented by Hockey TV, the official streaming platform for your EHL and EHLP action through the 2022-2023 season.
I'm probably stealing this from Anthony. Maybe not. Adirondack hosting the PA Huntsman for 2 games. Damn. I'm like
at Cool Insuring Arena, probably one of the best names out of any EHL arena.
I mean,
and that's the cool one that shows attendance numbers too, because they actually get good-sized humans.
They sell tickets.
Yeah,
it's like I can't even comprehend that.
I love that. When I look at their box score, it's like there was 382 people. There was 422 people. I'm like, that's impressive. That's awesome.
And also talking to some of the players, including Jack Randall, they said that I guess knowing that they're going to play at that facility, knowing that they're going to have Glenn Murkowski as the head coach, someone who is played and coached at some of the highest levels, where it was actually a pretty easy decision for a lot of those players to go back and play for their hometown team. So I think they did a really good job sort of building up that program, getting the right people, getting help from their ECHL team. And again, just one of the reasons why they've been a very formidable team and fun team to watch.
Was that the game to watch or the series to watch that you were going to say, Anthony?
I mean, other than maybe the 87s games, wherever they play. But no, it's a good reason why you pick them, because it will be a very good series to watch.
For sure. Tyler's game to watch is his home opener. It's easy.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
That's an easy one.
You haven't got the Colin Express game yet.
I've been waiting. I've joked about it with a few of the guys that I have yet to call a game yet for you, but I'm excited to get going. Obviously, there's a lot. They're off to a solid start, I'd say, 6-3. Brady Clemenson potted home a few goals, along with Adam Brunner in that mini showcase. 2 of the returning forwards from last year's group, Jack Boschwitz, looked good in net. So, yeah, excited to see the few returning faces, but also a lot of new faces that I've got to introduce myself to. So, looking forward to that. And Nick Code has done a great job off the bat. So happy to see him have some success early on in his coaching career here.
For sure. Jeff?
I'm going to go with a little South Central division matchup. Apple Core, Maryland for a 2-game series down at Brewster Ice Arena for the Apple Core. We were talking about Lenny in the core earlier this episode. I mean, that's a 3-way tie in the Central right now, boys. Rhode Island, Apple Core, and Railers all knotted up at 8 points. They talked about the South and how talented the South is right now. Maryland at 9 points. I know I keep saying in my broadcast, Tyler and Anthony, I'm sure you're doing the same thing too. People probably think we're absolutely banana land for bringing up standings right now. Like, you're only 11 games in. And we only play, 46 games?
46 games, yeah.
Yep.
So you're still, we're a chunk in. So it's time to start look at standings watchings. And I think Maryland's Apple Core, that's a good series for both teams, right? If Maryland can get some wins and move up the standings, or the Apple Core vice versa, is there a split? Does someone sweep? A sweep would be big for either side.
Yeah.
Let's take a look at that series.
Okay. Before I hit end, Anthony, did you want to give us another matchup, or are you good?
Yeah, well, Jeff was talking about matchup at the BIA. How about the BIC, the Seacoast Spartans and the Boston Junior Rangers? That should be a really good matchup.
Yeah.
Boston Junior Rangers been heating up recently. Spartans have just been great so far to start the season overall.
Yeah.
So you got two really good teams going up against each other. Looking forward to that one.
Two teams that believe they should be undefeated. So
yes.
But before I hit end on this week's podcast, I did save that link, guys, but I have to show you this.
Zamboni.
I just found something crazy about this Zamboni. Look at this. It has a storage compartment.
Oh, come on.
Dude, so you can put toys in it.
Yes,
so
that makes it even worse.
Even better.
More.
You can put the logo on it.
Oh, let's go.
Yeah, what happens?
You can put Bruins and Red Wings.
Does it show you like what it would look like? Does it make it black and gold? Oh, it just.
Oh, yours is gonna have to be like red on one side, black and gold on the other.
Or I just blow up an EHL sticker, slap it on there.
There you go.
Yeah.
Maybe you can talk to
That's the way to go.
Friend, you can get a patch. I think we got a couple patches left.
I'm just trying to picture the Zamboni, my child, and the dog. Like I can't really picture it all at once.
I know Nash the lapdog's gonna want to ride in that.
Is Nash gonna go in the little compartment in the front? Like, I don't know. Who knows?
It's so good seeing Nash this weekend. Nash, thanks for having us.
Oh yeah, always love Nash.
But thank you guys for this week's episode. Jake, awesome interview again with Joe.
Great job.
I know this was a longer episode, but a lot to get to. And again,
worth it.
Congratulations to all the players that got named All-Stars. Can't wait to get on the ice next week in New York. But between now and then, enjoy this week's games.
Thanks for listening to The E-Show. Learn more at easternhockeyleague.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Also, be sure to subscribe and get notified when next week's podcast is released.